We're almost ready to deploy our application now. But before we do that, there is actually a couple of things that we should take care of. And so let's do that now. And the first thing that I want to do is to install a package that's going to compress all our responses. So basically, whenever we send a text response to a client, no matter if that's JSON or HTML code, with the compression package, that text will then be dramatically compressed. Alright? So let's install here npm install and simply compression. Alright? So let's include that here. And so this will then expose a very simple middleware function that we simply have to plug into our middleware stack. So let's do that somewhere here close to the end. It doesn't really matter. So app.use, and then in there call compression. And so this here will then return a middleware function, which is then again going to compress all the text that is sent to clients. So this is not going to be working for images, because these are usually already compressed. So for example, a JPEG format is already compressed. And yeah, so this is only going to be working for text. And once our website is actually deployed, we will then test if this compression is actually active. Anyway, the next step before deploying our app is to get rid of most of the console.logs that we have still in our code. And that's just because these loggings will end up in our hosting platform logs. Alright, and so we don't want to pollute these logs in production. Okay, so let's just quickly search here for console. And as you can see, there are a lot of them. So this one is already commented out, so I'm not going to work on that one. But this one here, let's actually get rid of. And so now one by one, we will take a look at all of them, and the ones that are not relevant, we will simply comment them out. Alright? Here in the arrow controller, we also have a ton of them, but some are actually relevant. Now, not this one. Let's actually get completely rid of it. Also not this one. But then here we have these three that we actually created on purpose so that they end up in our hosting platform logs. Okay? So remember that we set it up in a way that when there is an error on the rendered website, that we then get a log of the error that actually happened together with this emoji here. And so each time we see this, we can then easily identify in our logs that something bad happened on our site. Okay? And so we have a couple more here, for example, for other unknown errors where we do not want to leak the error details to the client. And so these ones are okay to keep them. This one we also want to keep in order to inform us in the logs that the database connection was successful. These ones here as well. Well, this one here is actually in the import dev data, so they're not important at all. Okay, but anyway, all the logs here, let's keep them. Then here we have this one here that we only really did in order to use this middleware. So let's actually turn off this middleware, which again, we only really used to test this post find middleware. Next up in the user model, well, this one we also do not want. This was just once more for testing purposes. Then we have package JSON. So these are actually not even console.logs. Then we have the bundle where we are not going to change anything. Then we have index.js. So that's our client-side JavaScript. So let's get rid of this console.log here. Then we also have some more here in logout, but this one, let's actually keep it. Some more in Stripe, and we're not interested here in the session. But this one here, when there is an error, is actually okay. And then in server.js, we have these ones here, which we actually again did on purpose, so that they really end up showing in our log files. And don't worry if you don't really know what I mean with log files. You will see once we actually put our application onto Heroku. So I will show you the log files by then, all right? Anyway, all of these console.logs here are on purpose, and so is this one here about the successful database connection. This one here as well, informing us the port where the app is running, and this one are also important. All right, and so with this, we took care of all the unnecessary console.logs that were only just polluting our log outputs. Okay, so let's close all of these files here. All right, and now next up, let's change the URLs of our API calls in the client-side JavaScript. So for example, here in login.js, right now we do these API calls to this development API. So here we of course have our development URL. And so like this, it's not going to work in production because obviously from there we are not going to be able to access any development URL. And the same up here. But fortunately, there is a very simple solution. So all we need to do is to really get rid of this part. So if we just delete it like this, then we're going to end up with this relative URL. And since the API and the website are hosted on the same server, this is going to work perfectly fine. So doing it like this is a bit like specifying the path to images in the HTML. For example, here in the overview page, where we have these images, we simply say /image, and that will then go to the current URL and will then add that path onto that. Okay? And so the same thing is going to be happening here. Okay? Now again, this only works because the API and the website are basically using the same URL. So we're hosting them on the same place. But if you were hosting your website or your front end on one URL and then your API on another URL, then it wouldn't work like this. Okay? But in this very simple application, we can just do it like this because we have this very simple setup. So let's delete it here in login. In the index, I believe we don't have any URLs. Yeah, that's right. Also not in the alerts, not in Mapbox, I believe. Nope. But certainly in Stripe. So to get our session. So we can just do the exact same thing here and also in the update settings. Okay, give it a save in all of them. And so that one is fixed as well. And now finally, and continuing working on the client-side JavaScript, we need to create our final bundle. All right. So right now this is our bundled JavaScript file, but remember that this was just created using the watch function. So in our package.json, we have this watch.js script, which will just create a new bundle whenever we change one of the files, but without any compression or without any performance optimization. All right. But now that we're really done with all our JavaScript, we are ready to actually build our JavaScript into a final bundle. And here we should replace this watch with build. And so that will then create our final compressed JavaScript bundle. All right. So let's try that out here now with npm run. And once more using tab to autocomplete. So let's see. And it's done. And so let's take a look at our bundle now. And you see that now it's really this nicely compressed. All right. Now you also see that we have a ton of these new files here. And that's because here in our file tree, Parcel actually creates this cache folder. But we do not want that folder in our Git repository, right? So let's add that here. And so now you see that automatically as soon as we save it, it will then go back to the original files that were updated. Okay, so once more, VS Code is really smart about everything related to Git. All right. Okay, and I think that's actually it. So our application is now prepared to really be deployed. And so now the last step is to actually commit all of these modified files to our repository. So remember that the first step is to add all the files to the staging area. So git add, and in this case, all of the files. All right. And now all we need to do is git commit, then the message, and let's say prepared app for deployment. Great. So you see that all our modifications are gone, also from here, which means that the current working branch is so-called clean. And so, yeah, we're actually now ready to deploy our app in the next video.